Today we're going to be listening to several tracks from the game Signalis. Really admire and respect the use of classical instrumentation here, and basically paraphrasing and borrowing from classic composers and ideas from classical painters like Arnold Böcklin. In the first piece, Arnold Böcklin was a Swiss symbolist artist, and Wikipedia went on to explain that all versions of the Isle of the Dead depict a desolate and rocky islet seen across an expanse of dark water. A small rowing boat is just arriving at a water gate and seawall on shore. An oarsman maneuvers the boat from the stem. In the bow, facing the gate, is a standing figure clad entirely in white. Just ahead of this figure is a white festooned object commonly interpreted as a coffin. The tiny islet is dominated by a dense grove of tall, dark cypress trees associated by long-standing tradition with cemeteries and mourning, which is closely hemmed in by precipitous cliffs. Furthering the funerary theme are what appear to be sepulchral portraits and windows on the rock faces. The Isle of the Dead evokes in part the English cemetery in Florence, Italy, where the first three versions were painted. The cemetery was close to Böcklin's studio and was also where his infant daughter Maria was buried. In all, Böcklin lost 8 of his 14 children. The song is called Die Toteninsel, Emptiness. When we consider music titled Emptiness, what we expect to hear is exactly that, the feeling of space. I think that that's achieved beautifully in a couple different ways right off the bat in the first minute here. First, we start like this. This pattern is repeated throughout the piece. All it is so those arpeggiations are open. They feel vast. There's a feeling of bleakness that's inherently placed into this music. When the piano comes in, the pattern stays the same. The same rhythmic identity exists throughout the piece. However, there is this feeling of discomfort and dissonance that overwhelms us, and it makes us feel isolated. The chords are open chords. We don't feel held by these chords. We don't feel embraced by these chords. We feel the truest sense of emptiness from these chords. We feel, I don't want to say despair, but we feel unsettled. It's an interesting idea because even though we are moving, we don't feel like we are going towards something. There's no arrival. It feels like life is immovable and we are not getting to a place where we would like to be. And I think rhythmically, too, we're sort of off-kilter. We're not exactly on big beats. There is a sensation here of being a little off. There's not a centered quality. Even with the right hand, that is plaintive, obviously, but there is the sensation of somberness. Now, I'm fairly certain that Signalis has qualities in its music that are somber. There's not really a sense of optimism in this music, is there? There's a sense of emptiness, and, well, that's the title of the song. But there's a sense of bleakness in here. I think through the inorganic, non-human sounds, not that this has ever been human sounding, but the piano has been playing in a human way. There's little errors in the rhythm. There's little ways that the fingers are hitting the keys that feels a little bit organic and accurate to how a human would play it. This added element of this reverberation is causing a feeling of an expanse, and almost as if we're in a giant black space and everything we see is in darkness. And there is a quality of nostalgic reminiscence of even love, maybe. But ultimately, emptiness is the perfect title for it. It just feels like we're never moving forward. And we simply fade out and disappear. Now, moving on to Cigarette Wife. So this is interesting because we're using the human voice. It sounds a little bit like beatboxing, but we're using the human voice as a rhythmic propellant. And by human voice, I mean the human breath. If we think about breath as the life force that all of us need in order to survive, it becomes really interesting because this is short, shallow. This is clearly, I know Signalis is a horror game, so intrinsically this is some sort of chase. We're being run after, we're being pursued. We have this metallic, unrestful feeling in that. It's very ferocious. It feels like we're being grabbed by the neck. Again, if this is in line with the horror elements, then this would probably be playing as you're being hunted by some sort of creature. I have no idea what this game is about. And it certainly is a uncomfortable experience to hear this, because it triggers some part of us that understands that when we are in a moment of fight or flight and we hear, it's like you can't catch your breath. Cool, okay. Next up we have Schubert's Serenade, which, oh boy, this is the Schubert Ständchen. Ständchen is serenade. We'll talk a little bit about the German lyrics as we approach. So this is kind of cool because we're using Schubert's Serenade here. Softly my songs plead through the night to you. Leise flehen meine Lieder durch die Nacht zu dir. In der stillen Hain hernieder, Liebchen, komm zu mir. Beloved, come to me. Do you not hear the nightingales call? Ah, they are imploring you with their sweet plaintive songs. They are imploring for me. They understand the heart's yearning. They know the pain of love with their silvery notes. They touch every tender heart. Let your heart too be moved, beloved. Hear me. Trembling I await you. Come, make me happy. So I find that interesting that we're hearing this in Signalis, a horror game game. It must be about love or some connection to love. It's always so intriguing to me because we have these oscillations between minor and major, you know. Leise fliehen meine Lieder durch die Nacht zu dir. Softly my song plead to you, through the night to you. In der stillen Hain hernieder, Liebchen, komm zu mir, flüstern schlanke Wipfel rauschen in des Mondes Licht, in des Mondes Licht. Des Verräters feindlich lauschen, fürchte holde nie. You know, thought about this while singing it. You know, slender treetops whisper and rustle in the moonlight. In des Mondes Licht. The moonlight is a blessing. In des Mondes Licht. Is it though? Des Verräters feindlich lauschen, fürchte holde nicht. My darling, do not fear, fürchte holde nicht. That the hostile betrayer will overhear us. But why is the hostile betrayer overhearing us major or, you know, in a positive sound quality? I find it intriguing that they took this entire piece. I mean, there's nothing different except a different context. Erst die Nacht, die Gallenscharen, ach, sie fliehen tief. With their sweet plaintive songs, they are imploring for me. This is obviously just the orchestral version. Sie verstehen das So I often wonder why it's positive. Sie verstehen den Busen Sinnen, kennen Liebesschmerz, kennen Liebesschmerz. They know the pain of love. They know the pain of love. And maybe that's the crux of this entire game, is that phrase. I don't know. With their silvery notes, they touch every tender heart. But then here, everything changes. Schubert says, no, 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 now we have intensity. Ideally, it would pick up in tempo, but this one's not really. Let your heart too be moved, beloved, hear me. Trembling, I await you. And it ends with beglücke mich, which means make me happy. But you hear that it's minor. And it resolves in a major, but it's confusing to me why Schubert and Rellstab chose to pair this text with this serenade, because it doesn't sound like it's a good thing. It sounds like unrequited love. It sounds like frustration. It sounds like loss. It doesn't sound like optimism, and it doesn't sound like a love song as we would traditionally feel it and hear it. So you have to wonder why. Komm, beglücke mich. Why does it sound so somber? And on top of that, how does Schubert's Ständchen, Serenade, coexist with Signalis' story, especially if this is a credit sequence that's playing? It's pretty interesting. Let's check out The Promise, which is now something based off of the Raindrop Prelude, Opus 22, number 15, by Chopin, Frédéric Chopin. Now, of course, it's intended to sound uncomfortable. You hear a little bit of that twang of like metal scratching upon metal in the background, but it's interesting to me because the prelude from Google, the prelude number 15 in D-flat major, known as the Raindrop Prelude, is the longest of the 24 preludes, and Chopin wrote 24 of them. The weather during their stay in Majorca was apparently very wet, and Chopin is said to have composed the piece there, where the note repeated throughout the work represents the raindrops, hence the nickname. But why does it sound so negative? You have to ask yourself why Chopin would write like this. And us as listeners, our job is to interpret this as we see fit and how it feels to us. Maybe someone interprets this in a positive way. It's not necessarily a negative. Clearly, we're supposed to feel some sort of unwelcome situation, because why would it sound the way it sounds? It sounds uncomfortable, more so than it already does with the Chopin piece. This sounds more angsty, more sad, more angry, more disjointed, more frustrated, even though the piano piece has not changed from what the original concept was of just the raindrops falling. And then we have mechanical sounds and electromagnetic feelings. This is quite painful. There's a real feeling of emptiness here. Things are never going to be the way they should be. It really takes that Chopin and elevates it to another level of pain and suffering and totality there. Pretty cool. If you like this, there's more on the channel. Feel free to like, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye.